I'll bring you, no, I don't want it now, but thank you.
You did ask for healthy food, so I said the right story.
Beautiful, thank you.
It's just,
I just saw food and I was like, whoa, okay. Yeah,
there's benefits.
okay, now it's what?
So there's benefits in making me get up in the morning for this.
Okay, everybody, Shabbat Shalom, good to see you. It is Parshat Pinchas. And I will say that every year I avoid Pinchas and Pinchas's story, and this year will be no exception. I do not know.
No, my name is Pinchas.
That's very nice. I do not know how to deal or make sense of a man who spears people. I just don't know how to do that. So I'm returning to the daughters of Slovkad, which I do every year because I can't help it. What can I say? And they're incredible, but it's a little predictable of me. Oh, well, maybe next year I won't be predictable. When I have more time, I'm less predictable, but when I don't have time, I resort to the same old, same old. But it's still good, I hope. All right. So let's say the bracha over Torah study. Okay, we might screen share that. And thank you, Caroline, for doing all the background work here today. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher b'nishanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'aseh b'divrei Torah. Blessed are you who has commanded us to soak in your divine wisdom. Okay, so daughters of Slovkad, 5 sisters. Remember to turn off your phones. Who do something really surprising and really different for the Israelites in the wilderness, as I talked about last night. But today we're going to really dive into the text. So let me see if I can share my screen. Hopefully that. Oh, this is not it. This is it. And it's up. Okay. So, we can look at the whole, good morning, Thomas, good to see you. The whole wilderness experience as the Israelites just don't want to go forward, right? It's hard to go forward, especially in the face of, a new reality, a insecure reality. They don't know where their water is coming from. They don't know where their food's coming from. And this manna from heaven thing, can they really trust it? And there's crisis after crisis and complaint after complaint. And they doubt the whole enterprise of moving towards the promise. They don't believe in the promise. In fact, as I quoted last night, in the wake of the Korach rebellion, trying to remember, I forget exactly who says this, but it's like, why did you take us from a land flowing with milk and honey, referring to Egypt? So they reversed the whole thing. And God's frustrated because God has this project. God has this project of taking this people to a promise, but they don't believe in the promise. How can they go? So suddenly here are these sisters who actually want to go forward and who actually want a portion in the heritage and in the promised land. So they, in asking for a stake in the promised land, really show their faith in God's enterprise and kind of align with the divine mission. Okay, so we're starting from the sisters making a request. But to Kravna, and what's really interesting is that all these grammar forms that we're not used to because they're feminine plural, right? But to Kravna, but not Slovkad. We're not used to hearing that in the Torah. In fact, I'm not sure if it's anywhere else in the 5 books of Moses. Wow. And if it is somewhere else, please someone tell us so in the room or on Zoom. But to Kravna, benot Slovkad, ben Chafer, ben Gilad, ben Machir, ben Menashe, במשפחות מנשה בן יוסף, ואלה שמות בנותיו, מחלה, נועה, Hogla, Milka, Tirza. Not sure why the Hebrews been printed a little weird, but we can figure it out. Nevertheless, there came near, so they approach, and it's interesting because it's the same language for bringing a sacrifice, bringing a korban. There came near the daughters of Sochad, son of Hefer, son of Gilad, son of Machir, son of Menashe, of a kind of Menashe, son of Yosef. So we know it's the Menashe Joseph line. Verse 2, but Ta'amodna. So they came near, they approached, and they stood. Lifnei Moshe, Lifnei Elazar, Kohen, Lifnei HaNesiim. Kol Eda Petach Ohel Moed Le'enor. So verse 2, they stood, they came close and they stood before. Now listen to this, like this lineup is unbelievable. Before Moshe, before Elazar, the priest, before the leaders and the entire community, the Nesiim or the princes, at the entrance to the tent of appointment, the Ohel Moed, sang. So already I'm kind of struck, actually awestruck by their courage. These 5 women got up in front of everybody. And I don't know how people in the room feel about getting up and standing up before fire, but it's scary. I think it's really scary. And especially for these women who there's no obvious sort of precedent. In fact, there's no precedent for them to do this, right? To get up and make a claim. So what do they say? They say, Adina met b'midbar. So our father died in the wilderness. And it wasn't part of that group that testified against God in the Korach group. He died in his own sin. In other words, everyone dies in some kind of sin. Yeah, his own sin. It wasn't part of that horrible faction.
There's Diane, yeah.
Someone is not muted.
I don't know what to do.
The audio is
Screen is not muted.
audio.
Yeah.
Oh, no, I just unmuted the Zoomagog. Can you please unmute that? Many apologies on my part. Yeah.
Hey.
What's that?
Still hearing it.
Okay, now we're good. Thank you. Mhm.
So he died in his own sin, uvanim lo hayu, and he had no sons. So that's the source of the crisis, right? No sons. So no one to inherit right his legacy and the land that he would have inherited in the promised land. Verse 4. Lama yigarah shem avinu mitoch mishpachto. Why should our father's name be diminished in the midst of his family? So it's interesting that they put it in terms of not their own interest, but in terms of their father's name, which really has overtones with the book of Ruth about sort of inheriting land and diminishing the name of the dead.
Question, real quick. What is it? Why am I associating that with the die out? Is that
I'm sorry, you were saying what?
the word garot with die out? Garot.
You're saying it with.
It was translated diminished, be diminished.
You go right.
It's not, it doesn't have to do with die out. Okay.
Let me go Rashem Avinu Mitoch Mishpachto Ki Ein Lo Ben. He doesn't have a son. Tana Lanu Achuza B'Toch Achei Avinu. Give us an inheritance. Give it to us, right? In the midst of our the brothers of our father. Give us a holding in the midst of our brothers. Okay, so those are the daughters of Slothman. And it's interesting, this piece about sin is really intriguing me because it's like, sin shouldn't get in the way of our inheriting and going forward and having a legacy. Right? And sin often gets in the way of going forward. But in this case, they're saying, no, his sin shouldn't get in the way of, his name being raised up in inheritance. Okay. Let's look at some commentary. The Midbar Rabbah. So earlier in the Parsha, they were talking about the laws of transmission or domestic transmission. And what Bamidbar Rabbah says, give me a second. Yeah, that they step forward at exactly the right moment. If you think about the sister of Moshe, Miriam, when he was in the basket and the daughter of Pharaoh came forward, and that's when Miriam came forward, right? So it's like understanding what the right moment is to speak. And that's what the Midrash here is referring to. So it says here, but Tikavna benot Slavchad, and they came close. The daughters of Slavchad came close. Gdula lahen ugdula la'avihen. It was greatness for them and also greatness for their father. Gdula l'machir, gdula l'Yosef. It was a greatness for Machir and greatness for Joseph. Shekach yatzu mimenu nashim chachamot v'sidkaniyot. That such wise and righteous women descended from him. Ma chachmatan. What's their wisdom? Shelafi sha'ah dibru, that they spoke according to the moment. Shehaya Moshe osef b'parashat nachalot. So that Moshe was just talking about inheritance. I think that's the point. I think we can go on. So that's the greatness. Like they knew exactly what to speak. And then there's this great piece in Sifrei Bamidbar, an early midrash that says, "But Tikravna benot Sochad, and the daughters of Sochad came close. Kevan sheshamru benot Sochad sha'aretz mithaleket b'shvatim v'lo nolin nekevot." So when they heard the daughters of Sochad that the land would be divided into tribes, but not for the women, nitchabsu kulan zo l'tol isa. So they got together to kind of counsel each other or to take counsel. I imagine like in a basketball kind of huddle. Amru lo rechane basar v'dam rechane hamakom. So the compassion of God is not like that of human beings, of flesh and blood. Basar v'dam, human beings, v'chamad al hascharim zacharim yoter. They have more compassion on men, right? That's the way of the world. Aval misha amar v'haya olam, but the one who spoke and created the world through their speech, eino ken. It's not that way. Ela al hascharim v'al hanekevot v'chamad al hakol. Rather on females and on males, compassion on everybody. As it says, and here's the proof text in Psalms, Tov Adonai l'chol rachamav al kol asav. So God is good to all and has compassion on all God's creation. So I think this is extraordinary that somehow in the 3rd century, right, they had a sense of a different perspective that wasn't mediated by a societal view that somehow God could raise up women equally to men, even if in a patriarchal society that's not possible. Right? So they imagined a different view, and that's how they explained the daughters of Slavchad. Okay, so I'm gonna stop my share and see, Jay, you have a comment?
A small one. I am not a lawyer, but perhaps there are lawyers in the crowd here. It just occurred to me that the notion of standing before, and then the midrash that they stood at the right moment, connects to that very important legal notion of standing. You often hear, well, it was turned down because they did not have standing. And so I'm just wondering if there's some kind of connection in terms of that notion with even biblical times.
So do they have standing, literally?
Yeah. The legal concept of standing, whether you can in fact approach and bring it to the court, as far as I understand it, or something. Sometimes things are turned down because the plaintiffs did not have standing, and here they're standing, and they're standing at the right moment. So I just thought it might kind of interesting to connect.
So, and it's interesting because, just to give a little bit more weight to what you're saying, The word used for community or the whole people here is the ones who bear witness or give testimony. So that's really interesting. So perhaps it's a kind of, right, the community becomes a kind of court at that moment.
Yep, but I'm also wondering if the modern concept of standing is an echo of some of these kinds of things. It's just a stab in the dark.
Any lawyers have anything to say about that? No, Karen. Ah, Danny.
I don't see much of I don't think there's a like direct connection
Uh-huh.
between these things. There's like a constitutional provision that authorizes the federal courts to hear cases and controversies, and the courts have interpreted that to include like a standing requirement. And the standing requirement is like, what the defendant did that cause injury to a party? Is the injury traceable to what the defendant did, and is the injury something court can remedy? And then if those three elements are satisfied, the person is standing to sue.
Interesting.
So I think it's more of a vocabulary than like a conceptual lineage.
But I think the midrash, connecting to the midrash, there is a right and a wrong time that you can bring. There are conditions by which you can, in fact, bring your case to court or not. That's what I mean. It's almost more to the midrash. But anyway, enough said.
I mean, yeah, and I think the midrash is the legal concept here of, you see an opening, right? Sometimes you might be sort of carrying a truth that's kind of burning inside you, and you don't know what to do with it, like where to put it. But then there's an opening and you kind of step in. I don't know if other people have experienced that. Okay, any other, Rob, did you want to say something?
No,
Just respond to the smile on your face.
I'm happy.
You're happy? All right, good, excellent. Yeah,
If they had come a week later, it wouldn't have worked.
I'm sorry.
If they had come a week later, it wouldn't have worked.
I don't know. I just think.
I mean, because, very often I have a thought and I don't say something, and then a week later I say, I really should have said something. And then I go back and they say, no, sorry, time's up.
It's not that the time is up, but that there's a right moment to step in, and it's not that a week later is not the right moment. But it's like, I think there's sometimes like reality issues in an invitation that's circumstantial. And then a week later, maybe there's a different circumstance that invites it.
That was the same issue though. Same issue with the inheritance.
Now I have something to say.
Okay, now you're saying it. So the answer is, I don't know what would have happened a week later. All I know is that this is connected to an issue that Moshe brought up, and that the midrash makes literary sense out of that through this principle. Yeah.
No, I think your question is perfect, because a week later, they could have gotten shot down as heretics, as Quran, as everything. Time is its opportunity. And I know we can't discuss Pinchas. I don't even want to mention the P word, but that
You shall not be named.
he who should not be named, he had an opportunity. Had he waited, that would have been the wrong.
So that's interesting. So there's a connection of timing here.
Yes,
I like that. I like that. That's very cool.
And just to bring it to today, if I might.
I don't know, let's see.
We have an opportunity, right? Whether we seize upon an opportunity or not is up to us, but if we wait 6 months, to your point, it could be too late.
Great. I'm glad that you're not naming the opportunity.
No,
Excellent.
I wouldn't.
You wouldn't.
It's such.
God forbid.
God forbid. Okay, I had something to say, but I don't remember, so it doesn't matter. Asha Chaim. That's okay, no, all good.
Good.
I think that's a really interesting connection. I appreciate it. Asha Chaim.
I remember when my daughter was in college and she'd call and say, hi, Dad, hi. And speaking of money, dot.
Exactly, that's exactly what I'm just thinking. It's like there's a frame for them to step into.
But here we have the census, And specifically in verse 52 and following, these are the people to whom you shall allocate the land.
Yes.
And perhaps the daughters of Tzlofchad can intuit Moshe's wistfulness about inheriting the land that he can't go into, and that sense of yearning. And they can mirror back to him their sense of yearning for the land at that particular Eit Ratzon, that moment of grace.
Beautiful. That's beautiful. Love that. And I think that's a great concept to bring in here is Eitz Ratzon, like the right moment or the desired moment. And again, it's not that if you bring it up a week later, it doesn't work. It's that you can feel when the moment is right. Okay, let's go on. Did I miss anybody? No. No. Okay. Okay, so let's see what happens here. So Moshe literally doesn't know what to do. So what does Moshe do? Vayakrev Moshe et mishpatan lifnei Adonai. So Moshe brings near their case before the presence of Adonai. So Moshe kind of mirrors what they do because they came close, and now Moshe brings forward their issue close to God. But Moshe doesn't know what to do, so that's why Moshe turns to God.
Same as basically.
Same as the issue of the second Pesach, where people who are impure cannot bring the Korban Pesach, the sacrifice of Pesach, and then a second Pesach is instituted. Thank you. V'yom Adonai Moshe lemor, and God says to Moses, saying, "Ken benot tzlofchad dovot." You know, yes, they are speaking rightly, the daughters of Tzlofchad. So I love that. Like God is finally pleased with what the Israelites are saying, right? I mean, again and again, God is annoyed, God is enraged, all kinds of demands, but this demand, natom titem lahem achuzat nachala b'toch achei avihem. So give them a hereditary holding in the midst of their father's brothers. V'havarta et nachalat avihem lahem. You are to transfer the inheritance of their father to them. Okay, so this is really interesting because I think that, and we'll see, there's another passage in this parsha that's about transmission and succession, and I think Asher Chaim, you were so right to bring up Moshe's grief because it's about this generation going forward, right? And having the legacy passed on to them. Did you ever have?
Yeah. I just find it so, it's one of my favorite portions. He's such a feminist, you know. I mean, it's like the only place really, wow.
Yeah.
And I think it's interesting that I almost think in a gentle rebuke, God is doing that because the fact that the way it's saying, yes, you are, it's that Moses had this doubt that he had to question God about it. If it was a male, would he have the same question? So I think it's pretty remarkable, for biblical times, God's showing us that God is coming out with such force. Yes, you get.
Yeah, it's so clear and forceful, right? Yes. Yes, right, that divine yes is amazing. Karen.
I think it's more amazing in the sense that the father had brothers. So when they're talking about, continuing the father's name, this would have been more of an expected response if the father had no brothers, tribal.
Yes.
And yet even with having brothers.
So they take precedence over
They
the
take
brothers.
precedence.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
what's really
That is pretty amazing.
Robert, there's a hand behind you. Oops.
Spencer.
Yeah, so I'm looking at this passage right now,
Yeah.
and I'm looking at the first word by Akarian, which this is the
Yes.
same for making an offering, right?
Exactly.
Yes,
Exactly.
but this is reminding me of, it's kind of like the Cain and Abel story where Cain brings this offering, it's not accepted, and here you can think of it, their judgment, literally the mishpat of the Benot Tzlofchad as an offering that God is accepted. You God saying, yes, this is the right thing.
That is beautiful. So Benot Tzlofchad, the daughters of Tzlofchad come, right? The five sisters come with their offering and God accepts the offering.
Yeah.
Love that. Is there something else?
No, I mean, you can see this as like a sort of repair from that not accepted operating board, accept, I don't know, that's something.
Interesting. And also, right, they repair in the sense that there are 5 sisters who are cooperating
Yeah,
together.
get along.
Yeah, they're not in competition with each other. Love that, love that. Is there something else? No. Anyone online, his hands are missing? No. Okay, great. So, and I mentioned this last night, the sisters bring their own claim. But sometimes when you bring your own claim, you kind of rock a whole system. You open something up, right? We see that in case law again and again. And here it says, let's see, the El Bnei Yisrael tzedaber lemor ish ki yamut uvein ein lo. And again, that verb, v'havartem et nachalato lit vito. And to the children of Israel to speak, saying, any man when he dies and a son he does not have, who would to transfer his inheritance to his daughter. Ein lo bat, nitatem et nachalato le'echad. If he doesn't have a daughter, then you give it to his inheritance to his brothers. As Karen's saying, they're next in line, not first in line, which is pretty amazing. The animal achim, and if he doesn't have brothers, doesn't have daughter, doesn't have brother, doesn't have a son, netatem and nachato la'achei aviv. And he has no brother to give his inheritance to his father's brothers, says to his uncles. The ein achim la'aviv, and if he has no uncles, unetatem and nachalato lit she'ero hakarov elav mimishpachto. And if he doesn't have any uncles, then you give it to the next of kin, and this is again operative in the book of Ruth. The Yaresh Otah v'Haital b'Bnei Yisrael l'chukat mishpat kasher tziva Adonai et Moshe. And he has to take possession of it, and shall be for the children of Israel as a law for procedure, as Adonai commanded Moshe. Okay, so a few things from. Okay, so again, just to review, they come forward. Moshe doesn't know what to do. Moshe goes to God. God says yes to them and their situation, but then expands it as a law for all of Israel. And daughters are next in line to inherit after sons, right? And after that, the brothers of the father. Okay. Aviva God, Zornberg. So literary interpreter of the Torah. The reference to their father's son is mysterious. Perhaps his daughters fear that Moshe may be prejudiced against them if their father was party to the rebellion that was directed against the leadership of Moshe and Aaron. On this reading, the women are aware of possible bias that needs to be neutralized. In other words, they're engaging in like creating rhetoric that will be heard, like any good lawyer would, right? How are they shaping their case? But what's also interesting is that one of their daughters' name is Machla, right? Which means, wait, is it Machla? Which means, hold on.
Like Malchut.
No, that's Mukha. Machla is forgiveness. Machla is forgiveness. So perhaps this is also a tale of sin and forgiveness. It was sort of, codified in a kind of more subtle way. And the fact that the inheritance has been granted to them also, it may be a sign of forgiveness as well. Okay, so then this actually speaks to the question that Eric brought up in the Midrash before. They have a realistic sense of the political field in which they must stake their claims. So in other words, they figured out politically that this was a right moment to step into. Okay, wait, a similar awareness informs the Zohar's explanation of Moshe's referring the case to God. He recuses himself from the case to avoid any suspicion of prejudice against Slafchad as a rebel against Moshe's leadership. Here again is a reminder that truth is to be found within a force field of political power. And they are very aware of that political power, again, and how their timing and how they shape, the language around their case. Okay, any comments on that before I go forward? Yeah. Juliet.
Do we know that, their father participated in the rebellion?
No, they say he didn't.
That he did.
They introduced the case by saying, and he wasn't the co-op, right? He's not that, he's better than that. He's not against you, Moshe. Okay, so I'm introducing this piece in Deuteronomy, because there's a Rashi here. That references it, and you'll see why in a minute. Asher Chaim, do you feel like reading?
Sorry.
Number 6.
A blip in Moshe's humility. Lo takiru fanim b'mishpat, kakaton kagadol tishma'un. Do not recognize faces when it comes to justice. Like the small, like the great, you shall hear them. Lo taguru mipnei ish ki hamishpat lelohim hu. Don't tremble before any great man, because justice belongs to God. V'hadavar asher yikshem takrivun elai v'shama'ativ. And whatever matter seems too difficult for y'all, bring it to me, and I will hear it. V'atzaveh etchem ba'et hahi, 8 kol hadvarim asher ta'asun.
Yeah, we don't have the next verse, but yeah, finish with a translation of this one, please.
And I commanded you at that time concerning all of these matters that you shall do.
Okay, so note that here Moshe says in the book of Deuteronomy, the 5th book of the Torah, which is in his voice, that any matter that's too difficult for you, you shall bring to me and I will hear it, right? So Rashi picks up on that here and says, Asher Chaim, can you do the Rashi as well?
V'yakrev Moshe et mishpatan, nit'alema halacha mimenu. That arrogance of bring it to me and I'll hear it. Yeah, well, this time the halacha was hidden from him. And that's why he had to bring their case before Yud He Vav He. V'chan nifra al shenatal atara. And this is the punishment because he had put a crown on himself, set himself up as a supreme judge. If it's too hard, bring it to me. Should I keep going in the English?
No, that's perfect. Just the last part is really interesting, that the daughter of Slochat had so much merit, it was therefore this piece of the Torah written through them, right, as opposed to in Moshe's voice.
Right.
It says here, and this chapter ought to have been written by Moshe, like most laws in the Torah, but for the fact that the daughters of Slochat had so much merit, it was written through them. Yes, Tony.
This is kind of harking back. Did we cover, as I was daydreaming or otherwise,
You were daydreaming, Tony?
yeah, all the time.
Shocked, under the shock.
God is not sexist because number 3, because to me, what is most striking of all this great discussion is Psalm 145:9, and I wonder if it's in King David, where it said, the Lord is good to all, and his mercies are upon all of his creations. I mean, come on, first of all, how can anyone claim that for one thing, given how God seems to treat many people?
Wait, you're bringing up like a huge issue that's not really directly connected to this text. I mean, it's really important, but it feels like it would take us in an entirely different
Fair enough.
direction. And the point of that midrash was that the rabbis imagined the daughters of Slochat understanding a different perspective, a divine perspective, which saw men and women as equal.
This is way beyond men and women. This is like bad people, she, it shines it's.
That's a problem. It's been bothering me of late. But we can discuss it right now.
Sorry.
No, it's okay. It's okay. It's definitely a huge issue. Why bad people flourish in this world.
That's one half of it. The other half of it is that it's claiming, whoever's the psalmist here,
Yeah,
King David or whomever, is claiming that God is uniformly providing
well, it doesn't say uniformly, but okay, I'm gonna cut this off because,
good to all. Good to
just because
all.
I wanna stay
Good-
focused
I'm
on.
just saying good to all.
Yeah, I hear that. Not, yes, it's a problem. That I want to acknowledge. Jay online.
I think the genius of the daughters is not just political genius, but EQ genius, which I think is why it also became case law. The father did not sin by being in the rebellion, but the father was flawed. The father was not perfect. The father was just like all of us. He also sins. And I think that creates some kind of empathy, but also it's now becomes the common person. Whatever's decided really will apply to everyone because everyone is flawed. And I think by setting that up, I think that was part of their genius.
Yeah, that kind of acknowledgement. And it brings up the question for me, like, when do those flaws get in the way of making one's claim, and when, and when doesn't it? Right? And
But I think in this case, like Moshe later, the lack of humility would work against them. In other words, I think it created a certain kind of empathy and a ground for understanding, hey, this is important. It could apply to anyone, not just the
yeah,
perfect.
yeah, I agree. They were rhetorically brilliant. I agree. Okay. I'm going to go to Bamidbar Rabbah. I love this midrash. Talk about the feminist like nature of some of this material. It says here, and the daughters came close. Oto hador hayu anashim godrot ma shanashim potzim. So in that in that generation, the women would repair what the men had breached or destroyed. Why? For the men had not wanted to enter the land, right? And there's all kinds of examples. Shamru lo nocharu la'alot. So with the spies, they say, we can't go up. About hanashim lo hayu imahem be'itzah. But the women were not with them in that sort of point of view. Shekatuv lamala min haparsha. Ki amar Adonai lahem mot yamutu bamidbar v'lo notar mehem ish ki kalev ben Yefuna. And then God said to that whole generation, they're going to die, and there won't be any man left over, right? Or no man will be accepted except for Caleb, the son of Yefuna. But then they say, the Midrash says, no, they're just talking about men, but not women. Ish below Isha. Ma shelo ratzu l'kanes la'aretz. So the men didn't want to go into the land. They didn't want to enter. But the women came close to ask for an inheritance in the land. That's why this piece, this text, is near the issue of a whole generation dying out in the wilderness. Shemisham partu hanashim v'gadru hanashim. Because from there, the men breached and the women repaired. And this pattern is real, right? This pattern is like, it's observable in the Torah. But again and again, the men don't want to go forward and they want to go backwards to Egypt. And at least here, the women are not representative of that pattern. Okay, and also in, there are many traditions about the golden calf that the women did not participate in that sin.
Are these particular women still amongst those who will die before the children of Israel enter the promised land?
So, say it again.
Will these women die before there will be?
Here it's saying no, but it's not clear from the text. No, I'm sorry. These women are the next generation. These women will enter the land.
Okay.
Their father, Slofkat, we're gonna get into the meaning of his name, died out as part of the generation beforehand, the slave generation.
This is also.
These women will step into the promised land, according to the internal narrative of the Torah. Yes,
Or more recently, before that,
yeah.
I know we don't talk about Memphis, but.
How to teach Pinchas. If anyone missed what I said at the beginning, like, I don't know how to teach Pinchas.
200,000, the women had nothing to do with that either. Just. They have nothing to do with the no smoke and with volleyball.
They have nothing to do with the other sins
So
as
many-
well.
right.
So many sins that they didn't participate in. Okay, right. Sleeping with Moabite women, they did not do.
They didn't
Excellent.
worship volleyball.
As far as women worship, right, and they weren't idolaters as far as we know.
Diana,
Yeah, Karen,
So, forgive me for, but,
please do not, you don't need any forgiveness.
what is the relationship of these women and their attitude to the story of the spies? Do the women weigh in? What portion is the
So
spy?
in the spies, in the story of the spies, and it looks like the whole community of Israel are part of the freak out. It doesn't say the women weren't part of it. Right, but they have a different attitude.
Right, these.
They have a different attitude.
But we don't hear their voice when we.
No, we don't.
hear- They don't stand out in
They-
the crowd
no.
and get a response about.
Right.
These are upstarts compared to those, they kept a low profile.
Maybe they just, they were like, you know, quiet defectors then, but now they're stand up.
So this is after.
Correct.
Okay, interesting. So that's the Monday morning quarterback we're talking about. Next week you have a different response. Right? When they had the opportunity at first, they were like, no, we're not gonna say anything, but
Well,
now.
that's interesting. So why didn't they step up then? Why is this placed here? And, you know, we're coming to, they really feature, towards the book, the end of the book of Numbers, when the question of transmission is sort of up and transference of land. And also the beginning of some kind of like case law and oral law is in play. And I think that paves the way for the book of Deuteronomy, which is like in the human voice. Right now here, the human voice is beginning to affect the whole system. So we go from here to the end of the book of Numbers, the Deuteronomy, which is all human voice, and then eventually, right, the oral law. Right, it's like, it's the makings for orality. So that's why I think it's important here literarily. And it's also important because you want someone to be looking forward to getting to the promised land, right? You want the expression of that sort of, you know, that vision, not only from God, but from the community of Israel. And it takes, I see your hand, hold on, yeah. It takes the form of women for some reason. So, you know, it's interesting because what's coming to my mind is in a Torah conversation during services a few weeks ago, Jean-Paul Stiller said that faith creates a future. So here, it feels like, in some sense, their claim, maybe their faith, is sort of helping to create a future, right? It's not just, that vision is not just a divine one, but here it's in the mouth of human beings and the mouth of specifically of human women. Okay, Rachel and then Ben.
You started in on exactly what I wanted to talk about.
Okay.
Because I just had a new thought about what makes the right moment. And I think that this is built up both in a literary way, as the commentators point out, like this comes after the story, that story. So in a literary way, it's opening up, but there's a psychological component that you made me think of.
Karen?
Yes. Hi, Karen. My name's Rachel. I'm from California.
I was making sure the women in the room are named. It's just
the name. Exactly.
The men in the room should also be named. They're all the people of all genders should be named. Go ahead.
Yes, especially today. That there's also a psychological development in the actual narrative, which is different from the literary thing of what story is placed next to what. In the literal narrative, like you wanted to know, did the women say anything? And then no, I'm pretty sure they did not. Now, but by the way, I'm pretty sure they didn't charge up that mountain when God said, don't go. I don't think that was the women, because they were going up with their spears and everything, and they were gonna have battle. So yeah, they didn't say anything, but they didn't go up the mountain either to do battle. And I think this is related to the idea that you just brought in of having faith.
Of
But
what?
there's a psychological development, and the way I would characterize it is first you need to really conceive of something as if it could be possible, and then you begin to have faith in it.
That's interesting. So, and it brings to mind that like in this moment, there's so much despair and disruption, at least in my eyes. Is someone knocking?
No, yeah.
There's so much despair and destruction, and like, how do you raise a different voice in the field of those sort of dark signifiers, right? So in the book of Numbers, again and again, there's losing hope, losing faith, losing hope, wanting to go backwards, and they represent a completely different trajectory, right? Putting like a forward motion into place, which I think is pivotal in terms of the ability of the Israelites to go forward. Okay, Ben. I'm
probably there with that.
I'm Spencer.
I'm not sure.
We've got a whole different sound system, so I think you can,
So I mean,
I think you can sit there. You're audible. You're audible.
amazing.
Okay, I'm gonna stop my share so people.
So, let's see people online. Couple of quick points.
Yeah.
I think what's being discussed here is the difference between, basically because this generation is going to die in the wilderness.
Well, which is this generation? I think they've already died.
Okay, it seems like they've already died, as you said. But I still think that. Yeah, but I think that the issue that generation died, as you said at the beginning, is kind of like, for me, it permeates this entire book. Because I think it permeates this why the people are complaining so much earlier in the book. Because in a way, they like, you could say that their complaints is part of the, like they're wanting to go back to Mitzrayim is part of the reason why they are not allowed to go to the promised land, but it could be the other way around, that they basically make it so because they know that they're not going to go to the promised land and they really really want to.
Since this is gonna be their fate, they might as well act.
They might as well, like, they would be dying in the wilderness and going back to Mitzrayim. They would want to go back to Mitzrayim because they wanted the story to be about them. They do not want it to be about their children and their legacies. People are, I think that's a true of human nature, that people are not really willing. Well, the typical person is not willing to give up their own
Name and fame.
That's right. Their own importance in the story in favor of their own children.
In other words, so if they actually sin, then they remain centered in the story.
That's right.
Because then fate sort of acts according to their actions.
That's right.
As opposed to irrelevant.
So hold on. So I'm getting to this part.
Wait, I'm just digesting. Give me a
Yes.
minute. Hold on.
I'm saying that is.
Okay, come in for language. There.
So I think that what we're talking about here then is the subsequent, is that legacy, right? Is the following generation that's going to make it into the promised land. And whether that's going to be the grandchildren or it's going to be the cousins. That's the choice between the daughters and the brothers about who has primogeniture.
Right.
And so I think what the book is saying, I think, is, first of all, it's the father's holding regardless. So I think we should be a little bit cautious about how feminist we say this is, because
In a patriarchal
it's not patriarchal nature
Right.
to the whole thing,
Right.
right? What matters is who gets the patriarchal holding, and that part is consistent.
Correct.
And so so how you resolve that, I think, is it's saying there are two ways of thinking about it. One, which they're not saying, is that it's these individual cases, right? It's the timing and the fact that they're stepping forward now, these five sisters, and we're saying, like, these particular people in this case, they deserve it. They are deserving, and so we should, in recognition of their desert, of their being superior, right, as inheritors, we should give it to them. That's
It's
not.
not that they're superior, is that their acts are superior.
Or their acts are superior, right, but that it's a personal thing, it's a this, and we're making this precedent based on these specific systems. The other possibility is that they're saying that, which I think is more textually
Okay,
supported,
Ben, can we
is
sum
that
up now?
it's their plan. So we're saying we believe so strongly in the father's plan and in the survival of the father's plan and what that represents, that it is more important than the patriarchy, than the men having control of it. And I think that what that's saying to me is that we recognize the importance of diversity of clans. That we don't want consolidation of power in just a few clans, that it's important enough that this father's legacy and his particularity and that's carried forward by his daughters and their values is more important than the patriarchy. And I think that's interesting.
That's interesting, so it's the opposite of erasure. Like we want that name.
Right, we want that name.
Lifted up and to last, and again, that's echoed beautifully and powerfully in the book of Ruth. Okay, Spencer, and then
This question over here.
okay, Spencer, Tomas, Raizel, and now, yeah, I think that we're gonna go on. So, quick comments, go ahead.
My question was, what generation are those items in the
Good. Okay, let me just read one thing from Asher Chaim, because I think this is really an important piece of commentary. Kliya Kar says in the story of the spies, responded Karen from before, Hashem said to Moses, God said to Moses, it would have been better to have sent women as spies, since they love the land and would never speak ill of it. So that's a commentary that kind of connects these two stories. Okay, Tomas.
I just wanted to touch on what seems to be moral hazard in
Yeah.
oversimplifying this story.
Yeah.
Because the risk is saying that faith is rewarded and faithlessness is punished. Because somehow the spies didn't believe or didn't have faith or told lies or believed their lying lies and they were punished, they died, they didn't get reward. These amazing women, they have faith, they believe in the future, and they're going to be rewarded for their faith through this legacy they're founding it. And I think that's very morally hazardous.
I agree.
Because faith is not optimism. Lack of faith is not pessimism. They relate to each other. They are not the same. And faith indeed is not even belief. Often it's the opposite of belief. It's what you have when you don't have. And I think it's significant, therefore, that the action of these women, yeah, you can tell a nice story that like for them, this unreal place is already real and they're believers and they're manifesting and it's a self-fulfilling optimism. But it's useful to me that this is a grief response, not only a faith response. Their dad died and they haven't even got this imaginary land, they haven't even seen it. And they're worried about losing something that they never even had.
Beautiful. So they're gonna hold on to it, Father. I just want to say that I don't quite go along with the tone in which you describe the nice story, because I think five sisters getting up in the context of this literature is really powerful, and I'm not willing to diminish that.
I'm not.
Okay, so then
condescending to that.
Okay.
I know that that's central to the teaching, but
I don't think that faith is always rewarded in the real world.
To reduce faith.
So if you think that I'm saying that, then I really want to clarify that I'm not saying that.
Yeah, I don't.
But in the context of the Torah, it seems like the Torah is saying that,
No,
even if I'm not saying it.
yeah.
Like the spies and that whole generation did not want to go into the land, and they didn't. And here, the daughters of Slokad, I mean, they're going to go into the land anyway. But they are being rewarded for making a claim.
But to reduce women to mere virtue is still a reduction, and I think the fact that it's grief as well as faith is such a humanizing complication.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's grief as well as faith, and it's a moment which feels like crosses that line between grief and faith and looking forward.
Yeah.
And then when does grief get in the way of looking forward, and when doesn't it? And that's a real question for me right now. When does grief and or sin, right, get in the way of looking forward? Like, can we look forward right now with different eyes that don't only see destruction? And I don't know the answer. Did I cover all bases?
Always.
I don't know about that. Okay, I'm gonna call on Razel and then I'm gonna go on, and then Jay, we have time a little bit later, I'm gonna call on you, because I know you got your hand up, okay. Razel, we do not hear you yet.
Okay, I didn't realize that I was up. Okay, so I was reading Dr. Rabbi Jonathan Kliegler, who's sometimes called the Woodstock Rabbi, and I was fascinated by what he had to say about this parsha.
I'm sorry, what's his last name?
His name, excuse me?
What's his last name?
Kliegler.
Kliegler, got it, okay, thank you.
And so he refers to it possibly as the Book of Women, that there are bookends from the beginning of the book to the end of the book. There are actually 6 women at the beginning, and at the end, the daughters of Zelophehad. And one time, my friend Sean Zevid parsed Zelophehad as coming out from the shadow of fear.
Yeah, we're gonna talk about that, yeah.
So I would suggest that the 5 or 6 women at the beginning of the book of Numbers are still in the shadow. They're working from the shadow.
That's women are you referring to?
You're having Shifra and Pua, Yocheved, and
I'm talking about Exodus, not Numbers.
right. But I mean,
I was confused.
The book, I guess, the journey. The journey starts, not the book of Moses, the 5 books. So the journey starts with 5 or 6 women, if you include Zipporah, and they're still in the shadow. They're working submersive, and then at the end, when they're about to enter, and the time is right from all that happened for them to step out from the shadow, and speak their piece.
Beautiful, beautiful. So you're saying the whole wilderness experience, there's a bookend of women who kind of shape the narrative and stand up as representing something that's countercultural.
And that these 5 women or 6 women at the beginning and the 5 at the end are they're named. We actually have their names.
Love that. Okay, thank you so much. All right, we're gonna go on and do a few other texts. Okay, so let's see. I'm just trying to make some decisions here. Okay. So here from the Women's Torah Commentary, Silvina Femen, Rabbi, says, perhaps the most important legacy of Tzlofchad's daughters is their call to us to take hold of life with our own hands, to move from the place the others have given us or that we have decided to keep because we feel immobile, and to walk even to the most holy center to where nobody seems to be able to go. Okay, so we're gonna skip this because there's a few other things I want to get to. That's Moshe and Joshua and transmission. And I want to look at 2 things. One is a poem by my Favuta. I don't know if she's here right now. I saw her come in earlier. Rabbi Sharon Cohn Anisfeld, a really gorgeous, gorgeous poem, and it refers to the meanings of the names of the daughters, and also that the father is named for the shadow of fear, or shadow and fear. So can I have a reader of this poem in the room? Yeah. Go ahead. Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry, which one?
Kellyanne.
Good.
Inheritance by Rabbi Sharon Cohen Anisfeld. Years ago, I heard about a young woman whose parents named her Aksava. Is that Aksava?
Yeah.
Aksava. She walked through the world bearing this unutterable weight. Next, nice to meet you. My name is Disappointment. She was the 10th beautiful girl given to parents who longed for a son. Their hope died the day she was born. A stillbirth, you could say, but she was stillborn, like the rest of us, breathing, crying, gulping for air. When she turned 18, she changed her name. I've always wondered what changed them and what did. Last week, I thought of her again as the daughters of Zelophehad rose up to claim their inheritance in a land under a law that lacked the imagination to see the future in their hands. 5 sisters taking their place in the lineage of savvy, strategic women, using the master's tools to dismantle the master's house, arguing not for their own sake, but for the sake of their father. Let not our father's name be lost to his clan just because he had no son. Perhaps it's because I'm aging. Perhaps it's because we live in such unforgiving times. Perhaps it's because I can't forget the story of Oksava. This year, I hear a great tenderness welling up in these words. Devotion to a father whose own name may it not be lost, whispers to us of shadow and fear. Yet who looked at each of his newborn daughters and called them Malach, Noah, Hochlav, Milcha, Tirzah. I see him now, trembling, holding each of them in his arms and saying, never let anyone call you disappointment. You are forgiveness, you are movement, you are dance, you are royalty, you are delight. This is your inheritance. You will give birth to possibilities I cannot imagine. Lead the way.
Thank you, Councilman.
Wow.
So this poem, brings tears to my eyes every time I hear it or read it.
Yes.
And I have to say that, these days when I see babies, I wonder like, wow, like what courage does it take to have children or to bring children into this world right now? Or what vision, right, do these parents have that I'm not seeing at this moment, right, to bring children into this world?
Just to go back to.
Yeah, Karen.
Um,
Can people online hear Karen? Is it like banging, air conditioning? Speak a little louder, yeah.
So just to go back a bit, but to what you're saying, that the Jewish value of, or the human nature value of not putting your children before you and thinking only of yourself and is not a very Jewish value, as far as I know, as far as I can tell, because many of us, we have the great fortune to have children or grandchildren, believe in the future through them. And I feel like that is a Jewish value. You talk about that all the time, L'dor v'dor, generation to generation. It doesn't get more prominent in our Jewish thinking than to live for our children and so.
Pass on a legacy. Was it Ben who was talking about this? I think what Ben was saying, like, it's hard to.
Well, it's the opposite side of the human nature factor of, do we always put ourselves first?
Yeah.
Or do we sacrifice for our children?
Or what's the balance between the two?
Or the balance, right? Yes, there has to, right, yeah.
I think the gift of this poem, if I can presume to speak on it, is its radical specificity. Because we talk about what are the virtues required in order to act or move forward when you have perhaps faith in the absence of hope, or you're contending between faith and grief. And precisely the virtues that enable you to act are literally named in their names. They are forgiveness, movement, dance, loyalty or sovereignty, and delight.
Yeah.
Like these are, in fact, the precise vaccines for that disease. And these are very hard things to do, but they are the things that will do it in these impossible circumstances. I think the radical specificity of these virtues is not coincident, and it's beautiful that he calls them out.
And the ability to name hope even when you're in the shadow of fear, right? To name hope very specifically, like you're saying.
One addition to that.
Wait, hold on. I see there are other hands. Hold on a second. I also think that there's something about living in a violent world that communicates that none of us are important. So communicates that none of us are important. Like if people can be erased so easily and so brutally, then that, I think it's hard to sort of honor oneself in the face of that culture of destruction and death. At least, again, I'm naming my own experience here. Okay, wait, Jay's been waiting, and then Rachel, you want to say something? Go ahead.
I just want to not lose the importance of numbers 27, 8 to 11, the fact that this becomes law. And I don't think it's clan over patriarchy, because the argument can be made that, clan would have been to give it to the brothers, to the uncles, before you give it to the daughters in terms of that system. So I think it was very radical. What also interests me about that highly legalistic text is it starts with not having a son, which I understand. On the other hand, they're dodging the whole thing of primogeniture in terms of when there are multiple sons, which is, a big theme in so much of the Chumash. So I think it's kind of interesting that they literally were chosen this issue as well.
I'm not sure they skirt it, or if you like use Spencer's interpretation, that it's a kind of healing of that whole dynamic. And it's interesting that the Midrash talks about them sort of huddling together to figure out what they want to do, as opposed to acting against one another. So is it a skirting of the issue or a repair of the issue? Showing us a different way. Okay, Rachel, and then I'm gonna have to bring it in for a landing because I have to get to services a couple blocks away.
Yes, and I just.
Wait, is that the Ken? Is that the yes that that's supposed to the?
I'm saying Ken, Rabbi. And I'm thinking about something I'm wondering about and want to take away with me, not necessarily make a final statement about now, which is, what's the deal with it? All five of them, and as you say, they are in a huddle. They are working as a 5-person sort of team, and there's no question in here anywhere, number one of which one is a leader, but the other one is, it's not just one woman, it's 5 together, and I'm just wondering about what that's about.
I'm gonna leave that open as a question.
Yes. I'm trying to answer.
Beautiful question. And leave us with the blessing of, and this echoes what Tomas said, of like traversing, those lines between grief and hope and holding both. And what it means to raise things up and honor things when so much is so obviously ephemeral and vulnerable and fragile at this moment. I mean, always so, but maybe even more so at this moment, and what it means to sort of repair in the face of breach or destruction. Okay, Shabbat Shalom, everybody, and I will see you in services.
Thank you.
Thank you, Neil, for putting that. I'm going to take this with you. For putting that in the chat, the connection to the Women's Torah commentary. Beautiful as a friend. Traditionally takes 10 men to make a million, but here 5 women transform Jewish law. Beautiful. Okay, everybody.
I hope that